I'd like to welcome all the participants. I can see we have nine people so far with us joining, so welcome all of you. My name is Wojciech and I'm going to be moderating the discussion or the hangout. And please, when you join in, I will type it into the chat as well. When you join in, just mute your microphone. And this should be, of course, some sort of informal discussion, vivid discussion, hopefully. But I will give you the word to each one of you, so we just keep some sort of order. So if you have a question for Charlie based on his presentation, just let me know in the chat, or you can. I'm just checking if you can raise your hand or something, and we can start the discussion. So do we have the first question, please? Let's see, we have people participating, but I'm not sure if they are currently sitting in front of the computer. But I can see if you click on participants, you can actually raise your hand. But maybe we can kick off the discussion, Charlie.
Yep.
Together.
Well, I mean, there's something. There's a couple of tweets that someone called Cat Black has put down, which I don't know might be something worth talking about. Some of them are in. I don't know if are any of you on Twitter. You can follow these. Some of them are in Czech, but I can translate them. One says, I didn't play GTA, but if Prague was more like Cyberpunk 2077, Night City, it would be good enough. I'm not sure if any of these are actually that like questions as such. My ultimate neoliberal take on the Cyberpunk 2077 Night City is that it's actually quite nice. It just needs bike lanes. I don't know if, maybe they're useful prompts for you to ask a question to me or something like that.
I think one of the questions earlier in the Streamio, still when you had your lecture, was about GTA. I think that there was actually something which was left out in the model, in the virtual model, and that was the urban sprawl. That it wasn't actually as accurate Los Angeles as maybe it should be. Yeah. Have you came across this, that sometimes they they want to show just some sort of certain part of the landscape, or they want to idealize it a little bit more than the actual reality?
GTA 5 in particular is the one I've played most recently. I mean, but all of them they're more than anything not faithful recreations of the cities in which they're kind of roughly based upon, but faithful recreations of representations of those cities. So I think GTA 5 is more about the LA of Hollywood than it is the LA of everybody's everyday experience, right? I mean, just the reproduction of certain really, really like resonant landmarks that anybody who's just watched Hollywood films will have familiar kind of contact with. A great film to watch, by the way, on this is Los Angeles Plays Itself, which is a documentary of various just clips from like observing Los Angeles as the main character in a series of films. Really worth watching. Is originally based on a lecture by the director, who just then made it into a film. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to say about this is that I did actually, maybe this is a chance to apologize for kind of being a bit chaotic in the my presentation, because I'm not sure if you can hear now, it's still going on. There's a lot of drilling. So maybe I can reiterate here, the Euro Truck Simulator and American Truck Simulator has a similar thing that I was trying to point out, which is the scale is 20 to 1. So you're not really driving through Wyoming. You're driving through a kind of condensed version, which does. The problem is when a game tries to be realistic or seem realistic, you've got to be the most wary of a kind of representation that is purporting to be realistic, because it's trying to naturalize what's going on in the narrative, which is usually naturalizing something quite normative. Yeah, I don't know. Those are my sort of immediate takes on it, I guess. I see there's some comments in the chat.
Yeah, no, I just
okay.
To encourage our participants that if they raise their hand, I can give them the word. So I see there are some typos, but
No, that's okay.
I hope it's understandable. Yeah, sorry. I just go back to lectures, and you were talking about the games creating or the environment created in games. It should evoke some sort of desire on how to experience these unique landscapes, yeah. And that is certainly something we could relate to in real life. You know, I think that let's say the gaming landscapes are very often more bold and you know, more encouraging and more kind of crazy than when you look at the real built world. It, of course, you know, we have so many regulations to follow, and everything takes time, and so many stakeholders are involved. But I think definitely this kind of storytelling and engagement between the user and their interface or the landscape should be something we could take the inspiration from.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing I was sort of trying to say towards the end was about this kind of pivot or the importance sort of difference between distraction and contemplation. They're very similar in a sense. Like it depends in a way whether or not the game is I guess, I mean, you know, it's all well and good to present this idealized situation where maybe the rules are a little bit simpler and things are kind of raised above the ambiguity of everyday life. You know, maybe you can test things, but for the most part, I would say this landscape, this gamescape, actually it sort of presents a scenario that sort of simplifies the complexity of everyday life. Also, maybe kind of worth drawing upon Roland Barthes and his brilliant book Mythologies, which, among other things, is basically a book where he every week or month, I think, would write for Paris Match magazine about a myth, a contemporary myth, and one of them I really like is his discussion of wrestling. And wrestling is really like a kind of sort of a video game before video games. And why I say that is that what he talks about is that justice is done within wrestling in a way that it doesn't occur in ordinary life. So, you know, the bad guy gets his comeuppance. He gets put in his place. People are invited to kind of hate the evil person and love the good person, and sort of it gives people an idealized view of justice, which actually kind of reinforces the norm, I suppose. And I think video games are quite often doing that. You know, they're like inviting people into a narrative where there are like more straightforward heroes, and quite often as well there are huge limitations on like who, I mentioned this, who has power over the space, what kind of things can happen within it. But also they do give you sometimes a sense of being able to realize a sort of a rebellious act that you might not make. And I think the important thing is, and this is why I think games like Cruelty Squad, and before that I wanted to mention also Oikospiel. I can write it in the chat. Another really great game that sort of shows its workings, and it's just awkward. It shows the sort of awkwardness. It's not a smooth experience, and I think that's more interesting to me, to be honest, in terms of how we engage with our physical space through engagement with the virtual space. I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but it's definitely something I could talk a bit more about, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, talking about the specifics of the games and the gaming landscape, I can imagine. I'm not much of a gamer myself, but I can imagine that, for instance, the designers, other designers, they are, but they seem to be only passive users. You know, is there a way, or is there some discussion going on how designers can actually be more active in the gaming world, you know, because they design every day, they work in a digital environment every single day, but I don't see, at least here in Czech, many architects, landscape architects, actively reaching out to the gaming society, let's say, and taking their, you know, their spot in the spotlight. So is it somehow different, or do you see slowly designers actually reaching out to the digital world?
I mean, I can't speak for the context, but I think probably the first place to go, or way to sort of enter this world, I haven't done it myself. Again, it's a similar thing with, like I mentioned at the beginning, that I don't get enough time to even play games, let alone think about how I would involve myself in making them. But I I follow a few people who I think probably enter it from the same sort of position of, you know, maybe at first not knowing how this kind of potentially a little bit rarefied culture that seems a little bit inaccessible, how they entered it. And to my mind, the entry point is game jams, like you, and there's many of them around. I'm sure there's a Czech kind of iteration of, and you have them. I mean, they're advertised on itch.io, which is also a place where you can get quite a lot of independent games. And I think they're really like really keen to, like, the independent game community in general is very welcoming and very interested in being inclusive, and working out ways of offering that space. And on top of that as well, I think, as I said, it's about taking that first step across the threshold. I think it's similar to, you know, being politically active. You know, that it is quite scary, the first step of joining a political party. On top of that, it's much easier to be cynical and say, oh, politicians are all the same. I mean, I think that was something that was brought up actually in the, I was just tuning in to the talk. I think the participant Richard Weller, was it, or was it someone like that, saying, you know, politicians are all the same and all that. I you know, I didn't have a chance to say anything. I think that kind of thing is totally understandable to say, but is also, you know, you could also say gamers are all just a bunch of nerds, and, you know, they're exclusive and it's all just guys, right? And, you know, that is kind of true, but it's also not the case with independent gaming community. And I would say as well, yeah, it's scary to make that first step, but go to a game jam, and they're advertised regularly on itch.io, and they're looking for, like, writers, designers, people who can think through space in different ways. Like, that kind of thing is what's so exciting about the video game world, is that rules aren't actually that well established yet. That's why you can get a game like Cruelty Squad, and it shows, like, look, this is kind of crap, it's really badly done, and this is accepted. It's totally, I mean, you know, it's way more adventurous in a sense than most kind of avant-garde film, even, let alone like mainstream games that might get a massive audience. So I think, just the simple answer is go to a game jam. Take the plunge. But I haven't done it myself. So like, maybe it's scarier than I'm giving it credit for. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Because I'm curious. Yeah, speaking of that community, can you maybe type a link to that?
Of course, yeah. And also, like, I did find a few
Thanks.
conventions of Czech gaming, but I don't think that's really what you're. Maybe that's more for the sort of established.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, if you look into a little bit into our world, I'm an architect myself. I have a lot of colleagues who are landscape architects, designers, and we're actually we're spending most of the majority of our time in digital world. We're basically building models all day long. Maybe even the majority of the work we do is not getting built, so there is but we are only at the let's say threshold of the digital space. We just do the models, and I don't think we do the next step. There's not much of a coding in architecture, to be honest, if you don't count parametric design, but that's still only about the design itself. That's not so much about meeting your clients in a video game you created or something, or showing them the environment you created through a story or through an engagement of the user. So I'm just feeling quite a huge potential here, which is ahead of us, and maybe we should look a little bit more into the gaming and coding and the all aspects of the building the digital world.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone who's I keep dropping references here, but I will try and write them down. I said before Roland Barthes mythology, so I'll put that just down before I forget. But the other one I was going to say is someone really worth following, I think, who's an architect who is interested in not just video games, but also memes and architectural communication, actually, in terms of like actually thinking through how okay, a lot of architects communicate their projects through Instagram, but Instagram is a social platform. It's not a portfolio. It's not a space to put your portfolio. It's actually somewhere where people want to see a bit of yourself. And I think that in general is, it's a hard thing to do. And in most sort of disciplines in general, to sort of put yourself out there rather than just say like, this is the work I've done. But he's very good at, I think, saying, this is something that architects and specifically, I know with like landscape architects, I would say could be better at, and I mentioned as well this thing of, I said it quite quickly, but it used to be that architecture was the main site where the battle in terms of how we're controlling people within space was sort of being played out, but quite sort of long since that's been the case. And I guess architects are sort of at risk of being left behind in terms of the crucial questions about how people behave and engage with the urban landscape are being left to people in tech who really just don't know, actually aren't really properly educated in social sciences and things like that in a way that I think architectural pedagogy has space for and has made space for. So there's a lot of like, it's just a communication issue, I think, and a catching up with that. But I mean, yeah, it's about being multidisciplinary. I wanted to say something as well about cybernetics and the way that this discipline talks quite a lot about contact languages, and that in order to cross different disciplines, you need to learn what the kind of terms are and how they translate into your discipline, because gaming has a whole different lexicon, but they're probably words that there is an equivalent of within architecture. So, you know, it's about establishing that shared language that can enable communication to happen. That's usually why there's disciplinary barriers, is because there's not this, you know, shared language to communicate with, and that's a job to be done, I think, and something for students to explore, I would say, in particular.
Yeah, I would give the word to Sandra. She's ready with her question. So Sandra, you can tune in.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about the topic of awkwardness you mentioned before. And as I remember, you mentioned the mobile games in some sort of a negative way. But as I was thinking about it, aren't those mobile games actually an opportunity to introduce this kind of awkwardness into the actual physical space? Because of course, like, it's all the other way around, how we like kind of take everything from the physical space to the digital space. But maybe it's actually happening. I don't know about it. Yeah. So
I mean, it is already awkward. I think if you look at any kind of augmented reality app, even the like most sophisticated ones like IKEA's or whatever, you know, it's still quite clumsy in a lot of ways. I don't know a lot about mobile games myself in general, but I do think, you know, that is a possibility. I feel like it's just a case of people doing more of that. I mean, it's happening within video games, I think, because there's maybe, or it probably is happening in mobile apps as well. I think though, video game culture has quite a head start. It's been going for quite a while. There's aesthetic expectations that have kind of been refined over a long period of time. Yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of always somewhat terrified, but also amazed by like students and just younger people younger than me on, for instance, TikTok, producing just wildly impressive videos in seconds, and also the way that I think our economy globally has not got the capacity to employ all of these people in jobs that merit the skill that they have. And so there's lots of potential to sort of divert those skills towards, you know, questioning rather than maybe reinforcing the status quo. I do worry that like mobile games in general, like what my I mentioned him, Alfie Bound talks about quite a bit, is that mostly mobile games are geared towards distracting people. He has this great, he refers to studies that show that the people are more productive if you allow them at work, in like offices. They're more productive if you give them 5 minutes off to play a game, because it creates this new desire whereby you take a 5-minute time off and you feel guilty about it because you're not being productive, and then you compensate for that by being more productive after you've had that 5-minute break. It's this he talks about the big other, which is a Lacanian psychoanalytic term for this sort of amorphous or vague authority that we always feel that we should be behaving to. It's not clearly defined, but it's this sort of thing of, you know, when you feel bad about having eaten an extra biscuit or something, you know, that's, you're feeling bad towards the big other. And it's similar thing going on there in terms of it's a manufacture of a new desire, which is a desire to work more because you haven't been working properly. And I think that's what mobile games are sort of very good at now. And it's also something that we, you know, if we're on social media, it's the same things happening. It's mostly about distracting us rather than giving us the opportunity to contemplate. So I think it's a hard task to get people away from that dynamic. I don't know if a mobile game that I know of is doing that, you know, is making people contemplate.
But I mean, yeah, but I mean, you also mentioned, I think, in your talk, to that games are now being used as teaching tools. So maybe that's like also a way just forget about, stop thinking about them as like distractions only, and then incorporate them into our like productive thinking of about life. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just simply the what Mackenzie Walk talks about in Gamer Theory, that it's not that games are becoming more real, but that reality is becoming more like a game. And so our whole life is kind of experienced as a game. And if that's the case, then we need to think about like what kind of mechanics are there in games, and what do they teach us, or what do they reinforce within us? And it's, I think it's most important that they reinforce, questioning, democratic participation, rebellion, non-conformity, that kind of thing. And I think that it's a simple thing. There's just simple mechanics that can create those dynamics. That just maybe the people doing the opposite have got a head start, I think. I think the alt-right in particular have been very good at understanding almost instinctively or intuitively the value of technology and diverting people's desires towards nefarious ends. I also wanted to talk about Super Mario, about pedagogy. I cut it out of the conversation in the end. Ryan Skavnicki, who I put in the chat, but I didn't mention actually, who talks about memes and that kind of thing. He has a YouTube channel, I'll link it, where he talks about Super Mario. He explains how the first level is a masterpiece in pedagogy, I suppose. He has a term for it. I can't remember what it is, and it's like it's teaching you without sort of telling you, because it's sort of familiarizing you with a space and encouraging you to sort of test the water a little bit, so you learn. And a lot of games do that actually. Even now, you have like the first boss in, for instance, Bloodborne, which is a really sort of great game, highly recommend, is like kind of easy but kind of hard, and it's like your first test, and if you can get past that, then you should keep playing the game. And it's very subtle. A lot of games do that very well, I think.
We have still quite a few participants, but I'm not sure if maybe they're not currently at the computer or a little bit shy to ask questions. But
there's a oh right. No, here's the link.
What did you want to ask something? Yeah. I still have this in my head. Why are we a little bit outside of the gaming, let's say, gaming world, us as designers, and because we use, in terms of the media we use, you mentioned the Instagram, of course. So it's pretty much the architectural visualizations we use. The static pictures, which are supposed to tell the whole story and give you the instant emotion. And I can imagine that. Well, in most cases, it has to happen really fast. We have only like 3 seconds of the user attention. So we try to fit in months of work into 3 seconds of perception, and that's mainly what is the widest medium actually used in architecture is for sure the picture, the visualization of the dream world. We are often criticized that it never happens almost according to the visualization. The real structure built actually is slightly different. But I'm wondering what is the border we are afraid to cross, or why have we stuck into this? I mean, there has been a whole lot involvement in moving pictures into videos, into games since forever, and we're still using the static picture as the main element of our presentation. You know, sometimes you have the videos, but still you can see that in the digital space, which is focused on architecture, is the pictures. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about why is that, or maybe it's specific to our field. Maybe it happens in other fields too. I'm not sure.
No, I mean, I think it is quite a chronic problem in architecture in particular. The like communication problem, really. It's and I think it's to do with the way that the way school is sort of teaching students quite often in how to communicate. I don't think there is a lot of emphasis on communication in my experience of teaching, actually. Like, I mean, I'm not, I think I've already said I'm not an architect, so I don't have this burden. But in general, just the treatment of us as sort of teachers coming in to teach like a single course, maybe on argumentation or something like that, it often feels like a bit of an addendum, you know, like, okay, this is a nice little garnish to the end of the project, right? You know, you've done everything and then you write about it at the very end, right? Rather than seeing the whole process is more of a process of communication. I think there's like obviously steps being taken now to sort of correct that problem, but I mean, it's just sort of striking if you look at the recent Pritzker Prize winner Lacaton and Vassal. One's called Anne Vassal? I don't know. Anyway, well, Lacaton and Vassal won, and they talk about how like their main effort at the very beginning is to have conversations with the people in the area that they're engaged with, and it just seems really unusual, you know. And I wonder why that is. You know, why is it that like the actual communication, I don't know, I maybe it's the type of person that finds solace in designing landscapes rather than, you know, actually being socially active. I think there is this a sort of hiding behind the visual perhaps as well. I don't want to be mean, but
no, you kind of, you know, hitting the nail there, because it's
I just think, you know, I've been to architecture offices, and it is, you know, it's a lot of people working very intensively behind a computer for a long period of time, and I think you do have to be a certain type of person to sort of survive that, you know. And I don't know, it's a peculiar atmosphere. My brother is an architect, and I've been to his office, and it's a bit chilling in a way, like the ones I've been to anyway. It's a different one than where he works now, so just to say, if he's listening in the future. But no, I don't know, it's something about the mindset, but I don't think it's that it's a really complicated thing, but it doesn't actually have to be that difficult to solve. I think it is just about trying to bring that kind of social, personal aspect to the way you're communicating your project, you know, and posting memes, you know, like Ryan talks about it as quite like a interesting possibility. You know, it's not just something that is about meme pages, you know, pages dedicated to it, but, you know, we can all do that. And that's sort of what he's arguing, that it's an easy thing to get into. It's funny as well that there's like probably a lot of people who do that in their spare time, but don't see it as a serious thing within architecture, you know, don't see like, oh, I can be a writer, I can do architecture, and I can play video games, and that can be something that is legitimately a form of architectural practice, you know. Like I wonder if it's to do with the way that it's taught in schools. Yeah, and it's hard. It seems like a very complicated one, but it's also not that difficult to solve as well. I think.
No, but I think it is partly connected to the education and to the how we evolve as architects, and that maybe we think we like to talk to people, but maybe we like people to look at us more than actually engage into the real conversation, you know. So that's why we're using some sort of media which allows us to operate as a gallery, you know.
Yeah.
We'd like people to be quiet and to look at the pictures and maybe nod a little bit with their heads. But if there is a too heated discussion, it's always, you can see it on this, there is a participation process in architecture, especially in planning, in city planning, where where architects and planners are trying to involve the people into discussion. And it has its ups and downs, and it's very, very difficult process there. So definitely there could be we should work out on not just only have that, but how to manage that and what kind of media to use in order to manage that process better. Maybe we can get involved through different media in much better way. Maybe this needs a little bit of exploration as well.
Yeah, I think as well, like if you're talking about kind of more participatory processes as well, like it's just about meeting people where they're at, finding the sort of existing social groups, not trying to create participation on your own territory or your own turf, but finding, really, like, actually investing a bit of time in finding out like where the things are happening already. I had I interviewed this collective called Resolve in the UK recently, and they have this. It's a bit of like London slang. Who's on what? I think is how it goes. And it's like whenever they come to a place, they're always looking like who's already doing something, what's happening, like what's happening in this place, like how do we engage with that person. It can be a bit scary, but it's so exciting when you find some people who are already doing what you wanted to do yourself, like just meeting them on their own turf. I don't think it's just architecture that's like that. I mean, political participation in general is pretty problematic. I don't know what it's like in Czech, but I speaking from my own experience in the UK, like there's been an interesting political sort of awakening that occurred, and then it got sort of silenced in the last few years by the mainstream media and politicians and stuff. And so there's a lot of like young people want to get involved, but they want to sort of speak on their own terms, and it's not being allowed. I don't know, I'm maybe going off the point now, but I think it's just we've forgotten how to be social and think about political activism as something that's not about an immediate gain, but rather about sort of believing in something that might not even benefit us in the direct sense. So yeah, I'm talking really generically now, but maybe.
No, sorry, I derailed you a little bit. I dragged you more into the architectural world, the rigid architectural world, maybe. But I think we have the room for the last questions, because we're up with our time. So if any of our dear participants, if you want to ask something, now is the time.
Now or never.
Now or never, yeah. So
maybe I have a question.
Shy. Yes, yeah, Sandra, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking about, because of course we are in architecture in general, thinking about the digital space and the different ideas of how to approach it in architecture. But then there's the difference between architecture and landscape architecture, and how this difference can be approached in the digital space. That's what I was thinking about, because of course at the universities and school we always think about the difference as being the natural basis, the physical natural base of the landscape and as it is. So I mean, where's the difference in the digital? Where's the difference in the digital space? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this quite a bit because I was aware I wanted to talk to landscape architects more than just architects. I don't know if I've got like a very neat argument, but I mean, my focus was on, if I was talking about architecture more specifically, I might have spent a bit more time sort of discussing the interior spaces and also just buildings in particular. And I think actually gaming, the sort of history of video games precedes sort of digital spaces in a sense. You can look at kind of the futurists and the theater of the oppressed and Dada, and all of these things happen outside. They're about like rethinking our relationship with the environment, which just like I think it's way more useful for landscape architects in terms, and it's remarkable in a way that this hasn't been kind of explored from the beginning. You know, that like the video games are an extension of experiments that were happening, have been happening within kind of avant-garde artistic practices that are explicitly engaged in. I was just trying, Sandra, while you were speaking, to look up the because I remember I just looked up on Wikipedia landscape architecture, because I was like, okay, I really need to like understand in a very basic way what is landscape architecture. I know that sounds a bit basic, but it's sometimes I think useful to just sort of remind yourself, you know, sort of what it is, but you want to know what the official definition of it is. And it says that the design of outdoor areas, landmarks, and structures to achieve environmental, social, behavioral, and aesthetic outcomes. And I just think like that is, I mean, it's just all that video games is all of that. And, you know, it's way more than, way more attached to landscape architecture than architecture as such. So I think it's a really, really important thing to overlap. And I think also just this aspect of environmental storytelling, I mean, that I mentioned before, that's not such a thing in a specific architectural, like in a space, in a building. That's about leaving clues, it's much more about a broader atmosphere, which I think like landscape architecture is more engaged with, creating a kind of atmosphere in a wider environment. That I don't know if I can give a clear answer to that, but that's that. No, I mean, it's been nice though thinking about like this again. I haven't had a chance to. The last time I spoke about video games was a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, and since then I've actually become more of a gamer, I would say. And so it's been nice to think about this a bit more concretely this last few days in build up. Sorry, that's maybe not the answer you wanted, but
I think unfortunately our time is up. So
Als Beta has written.
We have
I'll send it right now, but because I can find it pretty quickly.
The distorted game, the last one, I think, yeah.
I think quickest way to do it is I found the link to the Vice article, which talks about it, that mentions it links to the video. It's the second video in the article, but the article itself is good for talking about. There's a great quote in it about the rules being new in video games. That's what's so exciting about them in a way, is that they aren't established yet. You can enter this space and not feel like a novice. So that's my big suggestion for everybody. Look into game jams. Actually, like, believe that you can be part of this community, because I think they're like quite keen to be made a bit more legitimate. Okay,
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much. I hope we will. I hope there will be much more Czech landscape architects and architects into game jams, and that they will take a look into this kind of very interesting and new territory for us, for us designers. And thank you very much for your time, for your talk, for your keynote, and for the discussion, for the hangout. It's been great to open this kind of new perspective. So we're very happy, very grateful. We really appreciate your input, and hopefully we keep in touch, and we see you around on different occasions.
Yeah,
follow Cam if you can. And hopefully this was the first year of Next Landscapes. Of course, we have another day tomorrow, so you're more than welcome to join. But we're very inspired, and we would love to do it every 2 years. So hopefully in 2 years it will be in presence, not just online. So thank you for kicking off the first year.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, and anybody who wants to drop me a line if they're in Amsterdam, I'm happy to meet up and talk more about video games or whatever. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Charlie. Take care,
right.
and have a good evening.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.